You can't force a spiritual awakening. It just doesn't work like that. We live in a world of instant gratification and we want everything right here, right now. But spirituality requires patience and it requires a lot of wisdom. Now, you will have a spiritual awakening when God decides you need one. Maybe you need to be awakened for some purpose that only He knows. Maybe you need some sort of lifting of spirits. You need hope in your life. He will come to you at those times, but you just never know when. The thing is, you have to have that patience because you have to learn to understand His language. His language is so subtle most times. Only the grand awakenings or the enlightenments are when He hits you with some profound message that you might not even understand, but you will understand His presence was there, and that will be enough. Because maybe one day down the line, let's say you have some kind of grand awakening and you feel God there with you, or you feel some spirit there with you, and you know that for a fact that they're there. You just don't know what they're trying to say to you. Obviously you put things in context. You take the situation. One of my biggest awakenings was, I was about 15 years old. We took a trip to the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and we went to the ancient Mayan ruins. First we went to Chichen Itza, and I felt something. I don't know what kind of spirit it was. I don't know what it was, but I felt that deeper connection to my soul. But it wasn't enough to, it was enough to kind of get my attention, but it wasn't enough to kind of move me and change my life. But just a few days after that, we went to this place called Tulum, which is another Mayan ruin. It's right on the Caribbean. And this is the first time I saw the Caribbean. I was drawn to it since I was a young child. I'd lived by the beach, and we moved to the mountains, and I just missed the ocean so much, and I started just studying it, and the Caribbean was the one place that I always wanted to go. And then one day I just happened to get invited on a trip there, just randomly. It wasn't even my teacher. It was with the school, but a Spanish teacher was going, and she decided to invite me. So I go there, and we're walking around, getting the tour of Tulum, and all of a sudden, I see the Caribbean for the first time. Now, I've seen a lot of beautiful things in my day, but that neon blue water above those massive cliffs that Tulum sits upon, it was intense. And I felt the presence of God. And that was the first time I'd felt Jesus. I'd found Jesus a few years earlier. But as I said in another video, it didn't move me enough to change my life in any way, except for I had faith. This was the biggest transcendental experience of my life until my enlightenment. But during this time, I was standing there and I was just floored. I was looking at that beautiful water, and I had to sit down because my legs were weak. I was shaking. It was so intense. So I sat down, and I sat there and I listened to God whisper to me for, it felt like an eternity, but it must have been just a few minutes. And the Spanish teacher I was there with happened to come up and take a picture at the time. And she took a picture of me overlooking that water. And, after that experience, I went home, and my parents, the Spanish teacher gave my parents a copy of this picture, right, and a bunch of other ones, but she said that this was her favorite picture from the whole trip. And then my parents gave it to all, as they usually did, gave it to all the grandparents. And my pap, who I didn't realize until after my enlightenment just a year ago, and he's been dead for at least 7-8 years now. My grandfather, he's been dead for actually a lot longer than that. Sorry, my time is really screwed up. He's been dead for probably about 15 years at least. But so my grandfather, who was a spiritual person, but he kept it hidden. But he got that picture and he saw it, and something in it moved him. He went and got 2 poster-sized prints made up of just that picture. And he kept one and he gave one to my parents. So my parents have it hanging in their house. And when he died, they had that poster taken down because we were selling their house and moving my grandmother out. And so that picture was there in my parents' house, just rolled up and put away because it wasn't being used anymore. Well, my wife went there, and my wife started talking to my mom about it, and she brought it home without me really knowing, and she got it framed. And that picture's been sitting up above, right in front of my chair in my basement where I sit every night. It's been sitting there since. And I swear to you, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together that was my greatest moment of divine presence that I've ever felt. And it was just sitting there, and all that happened to have that poster sitting there, it didn't even connect with me. I didn't realize that somehow my grandfather my pap saw this moment for what it was, and something in it moved him, and he saw this divine presence that I was experiencing, and that's how it came to be sitting in front of me when I sit in my chair every single night. So anyway, the point I was trying to get to was I had to tell that story because we can have these divine awakenings, and it changes your life. It does. And it renews your faith in God, but it doesn't do much without that wisdom. Until you have enough wisdom, and the wisdom that comes with age and experience and suffering is the main thing. If you suffer, you learn those lessons, or you get beat down by it. It's one of the two. Either life beats you, or you learn the lessons you're supposed to learn. And so within that awakening never really triggered anything deeper in me, except for I wanted to be back. I wanted to feel that presence again. So I chased it in the wrong ways. I started using psychedelics. I would get lost in, art and music, and just trying to feel that feeling again. It was like chasing it, but I was forcing it. And since I was forcing it, it wasn't happening. And I was going about it the wrong way. Psychedelics do have their purposes, but you have to also have that wisdom. If you don't have that wisdom when you're doing it, you're going to not get what is intended out of it, unless you have to confront. Sometimes you confront your fears with a bad trip on psychedelics, and it teaches you a lot, and a lot of people break down because of it. There's the Pink Floyd guitarist, the original Syd Barrett. He was chasing that, and he just had a mental breakdown and never was the same again. It beat him. The Wish You Were Here album, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, a lot of the albums are about Syd Barrett and how lost he was. We're just 2 lost souls swimming in a fish bowl year after year, running over the same old ground, but we found the same old fears. So there I was trying to chase my awakening, and it just wasn't happening. Even if I would have somehow found that presence again, Well, I did eventually, but not till after I had kind of a nervous breakdown from, you know, trying to chase it in the wrong ways, with the wrong methods at the time, definitely. So I was chasing it, and I was trying to force it. And one of the biggest bits of wisdom that you will learn in life is, number one, patience. That's the biggest virtue. But number two is you cannot force spiritual things in life. You can't force anything in life. You have to go with the flow. If you don't learn to go with the flow of life, to go with the flow of how God is laying out everything that's happening to you, then you will lose yourself, because you'll be wandering in places. Let's say life is a river, and you're going down the current. And when you're trying to force an awakening, or really any major change or anything in life, you are trying to swim against that current, and you're getting lost in the eddies and swirling around in whirlpools, and it can be frightening. You will feel so alone. You will feel more lost than ever, because you know that God is there and he visited you, but you feel like what you're doing is not worthy of him anymore, because he came to you. If he came to you once or twice or however many times, and he's not coming back, and you're going looking in all the wrong places, you will feel worse than ever. Your ego will just take over. You will be such self-doubt will overcome you. And that is one of the worst places to be. Having faith in yourself, because you know that God is guiding you, is the ultimate goal. But don't worry, because there's things you can do. There is the right way to go about finding God. Sorry, I keep cutting out and coming back on because there's two people riding motorcycles across the river there. But anyway, so there's a right way to go about finding God, and it involves not swimming against the current of life. It involves surrender. So you let yourself go. You follow the curiosities that you see, the healthy ones, not the unhealthy ones. Don't go down, don't be, taking crazy drugs and, following those curiosities. Those are not the kind of curiosities that come from a spiritual place. You'll know it can be even simple things. I'd mentioned in another video how I started walking out in nature. I just had this calling towards nature. And if you have a calling towards nature, you're probably a spiritual person. So the spiritual awakenings will come. The enlightenment hopefully will come. But out in nature, I walk around and I just happen to kick over this rock, and it looks like this shining gemstone sitting there, this beautiful ruby-like gemstone. And it was a garnet. And that was the first gemstone I've ever found in my life. And so I got into rock hounding, and so I was out in the woods all the time just looking for gems and different crystals, and it led me to different things. And I just decided I'm going to start following these curiosities, because I was miserable in life. I was so beat down. There was nothing going right for me. There was nothing. I was not being a good father. I was not being a good husband. I was just not doing anything the right way. So I just decided to go out into nature, because that is where I always feel the presence of God the most. Always. Every time I've felt the presence of God powerfully, it's been in nature. It's usually some beautiful spot where he speaks to me the clearest. And it could be different for you, but that's just how it is for me. So I'm out in nature, and I'm just letting my curiosity take me. I get into trying to get into mushrooms and finding edible mushrooms and foraging and all these different things that just I never even considered doing before, but now I just loved it. It just made me so happy. And even though the world was crumbling around me, my family was getting sick and, mentally and physically, and everything seemed to be breaking down, that was a place I went to find peace, and I found happiness there. But I would walk on days. I remember the day of my enlightenment, just walking and just asking God. I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm completely lost. You have to lead me. You have to show me what to do. And he showed me within a few minutes. The deer comes running out of the woods, and this beautiful doe, and she just comes and walks alongside of me, and I knew it was him. He answered me that clearly right away. And it's not going to always happen like that. I put years and years of walking through the woods with just little signs here and there, but I never knew it was from God when I needed it the most. Every time I needed it the most, he would come to me and he would show me the way. And that's just what you have to do. You have to put yourself in that positive mindset. You have to follow what you know, what you think that God would want. Live the life that you think that God would want. And not according to a church or anyone else, according to how your relationship with God is. And you might say, oh, I don't have a relationship with God. I don't know. You know what is right and what is wrong. You know where you can feel the purest. Where you feel the purest is where you're going to find the clearest messages from him. And once you do, then you'll open up that conduit to him, and he will speak to you whenever you need it. Whenever you need guidance, you ask him for it. You have to still talk to him and keep that relationship going. But as long as you have that faith, he will guide you.